Imagine being so discouraged, disappointed, and disillusioned with your life that you literally want to give up and die. That's exactly how Elijah felt in today's passage from 1 Kings chapter 19. He was experiencing what we would call today extreme burnout. So let's take a look at this passage and see what we can learn about Elijah's burnout and what we should do about it when we experience it. First of all, let's get some background for this passage. Elijah had just finished a major assignment from God. He had been called by God to confront King Ahab about his wickedness and to declare drought over the land because of how wicked the king and the people were. And God had granted that request. For 3.5 years, there was no rain on the earth, but now things were changing. Ahab was repenting of his sin and he was turning back to God. And not only that, but there was a young woman named Jezebel who was encouraging and supporting the prophets of Baal. And so Elijah was afraid. He was afraid that if Ahab turned back to God, then she would kill him because she was a strong supporter of the worship of Baal. So he fled for his life. And he flees all the way to Beersheba, which was about a 400-mile journey. And he gets there. And he's discouraged, and he's tired, and he's exhausted, and he's ready to give up. And he says, "Okay, God, I've done all that you've asked me to do. Now I'm worn out. I'm not going to do it anymore. God, take my life. I want to die." This is extreme burnout, folks. This is taking your problems to God instead of taking your problems to the trash can. You know, we have to take our problems to God, but not in the sense that we're asking God to solve them. We're taking them to God to be able to release them into His hands, trusting that He will work them out. But Elijah doesn't do that here. Instead, he takes his problems to God, and he demands that God solve his problem for him. "God, take my life. I'm worn out. I don't want to do it anymore." And verse 10, it says that an angel came and touched him and said, "Get up, Elijah. You have a big assignment yet to go." And Elijah says, "I've been zealous for the Lord, God Almighty, but everyone here on earth has deserted him. I'm the only one left, and they're trying to kill me." What are the lessons that we need to learn from this passage? Well, first of all, when we're going through times of burnout, when we're discouraged and worn out and ready to quit, we need to remember that God still has plans and purposes for us. And so Elijah needed to get up and get over his burnout because he had another assignment to go. Maybe you're in the same place. Maybe you're going through times of burnout in your life right now and you're thinking, "Well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that." Don't quit. God still has plans and purposes for you. And sometimes those plans and purposes are going to require us to get up and get over the burnout, to realize that God still has plans and purposes for us. Secondly, Elijah was guilty of what we would call today a pity party. He was having a pity party for one. He was sitting there by himself in the wilderness. He was by himself when he wrote that letter to King Jehoshaphat. And he was focusing in on his own problems. He wasn't looking at the bigger picture. And so we need to make sure that when we're going through times of burnout, that we do not get caught up in a pity party for one, and that we remember that God still has plans and purposes for us. Finally, we need to learn that God doesn't always tell us what our assignments are. We don't always get to choose what our assignments are. Sometimes God is going to say, "This is what you're going to do," like He did with Jonah, like He did with Moses, like He did with Abraham, like He did with David. Sometimes God's going to say, "You're going somewhere you do not want to go, or you're doing something you do not want to do." And that's exactly what God said to Elijah here. "Get up, Elijah. You have a big assignment yet to go." Sometimes God calls us to do things that we don't want to do. And when we're burnt out, we really don't want to do anything. But we need to remember that God still has plans and purposes for us. So even though we're burnt out, even though we don't feel like it, even though we're not enthusiastic, even though we don't want to do it, we still have to do it because God has given us an assignment. So if you're burnt out today, I would encourage you to remember these 3 things. No. 1. God still has plans and purposes for you. So don't give up. Don't quit. Remember that God still has plans and purposes for you. Secondly, don't get caught up in a pity party. Don't sit there and focus in on your problems. Look at the bigger picture. God still has plans and purposes for you. And thirdly, you may not always get to choose what those assignments are. You may not always get to choose when they're gonna happen. God might say, right now is the time. But remember, God still has plans and purposes for you. So whatever it is that you're going through, whatever it is that you're facing, whatever it is that you're dealing with, I would encourage you, don't give up. Don't quit. God still has plans and purposes for you.